Hey, welcome to The Explainer, where we dig into some really big ideas. Today, we are diving headfirst into a pretty wild paper that proposes a completely new way to think about intelligence, reality, and, well, pretty much everything. They're even suggesting it might be the theory of everything that scientists have been searching for. So let's kick things off with a question that this paper from alexanderngu and his team basically asks. What if one of the most basic fundamental symbols we use in all of mathematics is actually the very thing that's limiting our understanding of the universe? We've all seen this, right? E equals mc squared. It's maybe the most famous equation in the world. But the paper we're looking at today asks us to ignore the E, the M, and the C for a second, and just focus on that tiny little symbol in the middle, the equal sign. I mean, think about it. The equal sign has been around since 1557, and it's great for what it does, saying this thing is exactly the same as that thing. But the paper argues that's also its biggest weakness. It's all about static, unchanging states. It's just not built to describe the messy, dynamic, constantly changing world we actually live in. The way the authors put it is like this. The equal sign is all about denotation. It's a straight line. X times is Y. A dog is a canine. Simple. But the universe mostly runs on connotation, these more fluid, indirect relationships. You know, how a tiny seed becomes a giant tree, or how a vague idea transforms into a full-blown theory. We just don't have a good symbol for that process of becoming. Exactly. They're not looking for another way to say two things are the same. As they say right here, they're on the hunt for a symbol that can actually represent transformability itself, the magic of how one thing can actually turn into something else, and maybe even turn back again. Okay, so if the good old equal sign isn't up to the task, what do we replace it with? Well, this is the really cool part. The paper introduces a totally new, really fundamental idea for how to connect things. And this is it. It might look a little intimidating, but it's actually built on three really simple concepts. You've got the delta, the triangle, which stands for the infinitesimal, like a single, tiny starting point. Then you have the infinity symbol, which is exactly what it looks like, an infinite process of change. And finally, you have the circle, the O, which represents the finite, the final, complete, whole thing. It's a whole new language for describing change. So how are we supposed to wrap our heads around this? Thankfully, the paper gives us this really elegant and simple visual that just makes it all click into place. It's all about the actual shape of change. Okay, just picture a triangle. It's the simplest polygon you can make. That's our delta, our tiny starting point. Now imagine you start adding sides to it. You go from 3 sides to 4, to 5, to 100, to 1,000,000. You do this an infinite number of times. That's our infinity symbol in action. And what do you eventually end up with? A perfect circle, which is basically a polygon with an infinite number of sides. That's our complete finite O. So you see it? From a simple start, the delta, through an infinite process, the infinity, to a complete whole, the circle. That's the core idea right there. But here's where they make a huge leap. The authors claim this isn't just some neat geometry trick. They're proposing that this 3-part structure, this journey from a simple beginning through a process of change to a final form, is a universal pattern, something that's literally woven into the fabric of reality. And this is where things get really, really mind-bending. Just look at this table. They start mapping their delta omega idea onto some of the biggest concepts in all of science. Like in physics, they say force is the infinitesimal push, our delta, mass is the infinite process or potential, our omega, and acceleration is the finite measurable result, our omega. And then look at the bottom row. They do it to Einstein's equation. They frame energy, E, as the starting spark, delta, the equal sign itself as the infinite transformation, omega, and mc squared as the stable, finite result of matter, omega. This brings us to probably their boldest claim. They're suggesting that E equal mc squared isn't the fundamental truth we've always thought it was. Instead, it's just one specific example, one instance, of this much deeper universal law of transformation. From this perspective, the equal sign isn't about equality anymore. It's the symbol for the infinite process that transforms pure energy into the solid reality of mass. So, what in the world does any of this have to do with artificial intelligence? Well, according to this paper, everything. They think this universal pattern is the actual blueprint we need to build a truly general AI, right from the very first principle. They've even named it a general language model, or GLM. Now here's the crucial difference. The AI models we have today, they work by crunching just insane amounts of data, hoping to find patterns buried inside. A GLM would do the opposite. It would start with the most fundamental pattern in the universe, this principle of transformation already hardwired into its core. Yeah, this slide lays it out perfectly. On the left, you have our current AIs, which is kind of like a brute force search for meaning in a sea of information. It takes a staggering amount of energy. On the right, you have their GLM, which starts with this universal pattern as its built-in spine. It wouldn't have to learn relationships from scratch. It would already have the framework to organize them, and that could make it incredibly more efficient. And all of this leads to the most radical idea in the whole paper, a total rethinking of what intelligence even is. They're saying we've got it backwards. Intelligence isn't about what something does. It's not about passing a test or writing a poem. They argue that intelligence is this fundamental principle of transformation. Intelligence is the symbol delta OO. So in their view, we're not trying to create intelligence. We're trying to discover and apply a fundamental law of the universe. I know, it's a huge, very abstract concept, but it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? It challenges us to ask if we're even looking for the secrets of the universe in the right places. Maybe the next massive breakthrough isn't going to come from a bigger computer, but from finally noticing this simple, elegant pattern that might have been hiding in plain sight this whole time. What do you think?